Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a place where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourselves. I feel like most of us can quote that now, right? Because again, this is a space, this is a holy, sacred space. We can come together, we can ask questions, we can delve in deeper. The liminal space of not knowing is actually a really beautiful one. And so that's what we try to create in these videos. So wherever you're watching from, whatever state you're in, state of mind or physical state, we're glad you're here. And again, anyone who's wanting to support this video and what we do, please look at the links below in the description. You'll find it all there. So we have been moving through the series, and it has been so much fun. And I want to start by telling you this. If you have questions, comments, responses, disagreements, please email me at tonywerfel@gmail.com. And I will do my best to respond. Usually within the week, I can typically respond. And those conversations I'm having with so many of you, it has been such just an honor to be going back and forth with these really good conversations on what brings life, what doesn't, how to view the Bible in responsible ways. It has been so much fun. So with that being said, one of you, you wrote me this question. I thought this was really good. And I thought it was interestingly enough that I actually did a podcast, episode 142 on Apple iTunes. You can find it there. I'm going to do my best right now, though, to do like a summation of a response to this because I thought it was a great one. So I've just built it up. So let me actually read you the question. So here it was. Is COVID-19 and everything going on, again, everything in the world right now, the quarantine, all of it, right? Everything going on, a sign of the end, right? Very ominous. And should we be reading the book of Revelation again? So what I understood them to mean after I kind of asked some questions was the end of the world, right? Is this the end of the world? And for many people, when they see everything going on, the wars, earthquakes in Idaho, right? We've got pandemics, we've got computer chipping in the hand, all this kind of stuff that you keep reading about, mandates for vaccinations, all of it. This is all happening, right? All these questions, all these concerns, one world order, all this kind of stuff. Was the book of Revelation, was it foretelling of this? Was the book of Revelation, written in the first century, was it pointing forward to the 21st century? Should we be looking at this book now with our decoder rings out, trying to figure out what John was pointing to 2,000 plus 3,000 years later? Here's my answer. Yes and no. Yes and no. First off, no. And I say no. The book of Revelation, even the word, right? The word revelation means to reveal. And if you go back far enough, you'll understand the word apocalypto, it simply meant this. It was like a picture. Someone going to the dirt, removing the dirt and uncovering something. So typically, like after a rainstorm or something, stuff is unearthed, right? Stuff comes to the surface. And you see it and you think, it's always been there, but now that it's come to the surface, there's some interesting observations I will have now of it. So the idea of the book of Revelation being like future predictions, that's a new idea. It didn't happen until around the 1800s, mid-1800s. The idea that Revelation was about pointing forward thousands of years later, that's not at all Jewish. It's not how they wrote. It's not the original intent of the author. It just wasn't. And so here's what's happening in the book of Revelation that's really important to understand. The writer John, a very common name, most theologians today don't believe it was actually John, the apostle of Jesus that you hear about in the Gospels. John's a very common name. So the uncovering of John is basically this. John, a citizen now of Rome, a Jewish citizen, he's doing what many of us are doing. He's sitting back and he's observing. He's seen all of the things being unearthed in the middle of all the pain, the brokenness. He's watching an empire fall. That's what John's doing. And so John was there when Nero Emperor Nero, when he decided to scapegoat the Jewish people and use their heads as basically torches for his garden, he watched that, saw it all happen. He watched as Emperor Domitian. Got so needy for worship that he put all of these incense worship stations around the city. And if you wanted to buy or sell in the marketplace, you had to light incense. And then you had to take the incense and you had to mark your hand. And once the mark was there, you could then buy and sell. He watched that happen. He watched as Emperor Domitian created these games because he felt the people there, they had all this anger and angst, and they saw the class systems and the misuses of power, right? They saw all of this and they were getting angry with their emperor. So what does he do? He creates games to distract them. And he'll sit up on his throne that's decked with jewels while everyone's wearing white, watching as a red and a black and a white horse rider battle in this thing called the Domitian Games. Isn't this fun? If you've ever read the book of Revelation, you will connect all of these things. John is basically doing this. He's saying, I am choosing to be an observer. I'm going to observe what beastly power looks like when it's approaching its end. And here's the question he poses. How do we, as Christ followers, respond in the middle of this? How do we respond to beastly powers, abusive powers, narratives that are bringing death, right? Destructive political and religious systems. What do we do with it? And John's response was this. We choose to respond with nonviolent protest, lamb-like love. That's the way of the Jewish people post-Jesus. They're choosing to follow nonviolent protests rather than eye for an eye violence. After watching their temple destroyed, they knew that doesn't bring life anymore. And so John is observing and he's watching as the Roman Empire does this. It's beginning to fall. And how should his people respond? So, no, it's not a book about predictions. No, you shouldn't be looking at this book to try to figure out, am I getting the mark of the beast or not? Well, no, that wasn't the point. Yes, though. Yes, this is a book about empires falling and how their people respond as things come to the surface. And so my question to you right now in the middle of COVID-19 is what's coming to the surface, right? We're seeing our nation just filled with division. We're seeing a lot of different narratives being brought out. We're actually losing some sense of power. There's a lot of things going on. There's actually, in the midst of all the negative, there is a lot of people rising up. Some people are choosing to cross the aisle. Republicans, Democrats, liberals, conservatives, they're crossing the aisles and they're beginning to have conversations. We're not seeing it in the political system yet, but we are seeing it with our neighbors. We're seeing it with various countries and states. We're beginning to have conversations. And maybe if we model it well enough, our political system will follow. John seemed to think so. Jesus seemed to think so. So is the book of Revelation helpful at this point in time in our history? Absolutely. But if you're using it as decoder rings to decode this thing from looking at the past, no. But if you're using it as a model and a guide for how to respond, what a beautiful book. I hope that was helpful. And if you want to see more about my teachings on the book of Revelation, feel free to look at my podcast. There's a ton there. Anyways, we're going to keep moving through this series, A New Way to Be Human. Because again, we believe the teachings of Jesus are so helpful, especially right here and now. So to recap, Jesus, he goes up onto a mountain, just like Moses did. He begins sharing from the Torah. He begins expanding, right? And again, the people, first century people, they make the connection. So again, the Sermon on the Mount is actually, and I hope you can quote this by heart now, a deeper critique into the heart of the law. Yeah, shows us the heart of the law. So Jesus becomes Moses 2.0. Comes at a time where they lost everything. Their temple, their family, so much brokenness and death. And the message of Jesus is very simple. It's there's life around the corner. There's new life around the corner. There's resurrection. The temple's been destroyed. Our nation is not dead. It actually lives within us. We model it just like Jesus did. Yeah. We're done. That's it. That's all I needed to say. No, it's beautiful and it makes perfect sense. And when we view it through that lens, the whole thing opens up. It becomes so beautiful. So today, we're going to move into Matthew chapter 7, verse 15 through 20. Because we've already looked at the happy are you if, the blessings, all of that. Today we'll look at this one. And I think you'll make connections immediately. But beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are savage wolves. By their fruits you shall know them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? Every good tree yields good fruit, but a rotten tree yields wicked fruit. A good tree is unable to yield wicked fruit, and a rotten tree to yield good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. Again, this is an agrarian culture. That's what they would do. So then, by their fruits you shall know them. So notice there's a lot of agrarian culture mixed in with this. This idea of literally like thrown into the fire would make perfect sense to an agrarian culture. This is not a reference toward some burning hereafter where you go when you die. Not at all. This is talking about what teachings bring life and which ones don't. Because for them, in the middle of all of this, there were a lot of different teachers who were saying, look, man, we were just destroyed again. We gotta mount up an even stronger response to this. We got to get a larger army to fight Rome. Yeah, it didn't bring life, did it? Couple different voices during that time period, and the people were asking, who do we listen to? Who do we put stock in? Yeah, makes sense. And so today we get this. The wolf, right? Who's hiding in sheep clothing. We see this over and over again. There have been so many cult leaders that we know of. David Koresh. So many of these guys are saying, drink my Kool-Aid, right? And the question, of course, is simple. How do we know if it brings life or death? Truths, right? How do we know if this is a false teacher or not? Right now in our culture, we have fact-checking. Fact-checking. And when you really dig deep, the fact-checkers sometimes need to be checked, don't they? We allow so many people to do fact-checking for us, don't we? For many of us right now, we've allowed our gray matter, our brains to stop working. If someone who has some sort of authority stands up and says, it's this way, oftentimes in our culture right now, scarily enough, people will just simply accept it. And so in the middle of this first century, this is what was happening. The fact checkers were checking. The governors, the political people, the religious people, they all had a certain view. And of course, the question over and over again that was at the surface was, well, what is true? What's going to bring life? What's not? How do we decide what is true and what isn't? That's the question over and over again. And so Jesus' response, he hits it. He hits it right away. And it's actually a reference toward Deuteronomy. Again, Deuteronomy, he's looking to the past. So let me read to you Deuteronomy because it's essentially the same concept. Here we go. Suppose a prophet or one who foretells by dreams should appear among you and show you a sign or wonder. And the sign or wonder should come to pass concerning what he said to you, namely, let us follow other Elohim, other gods, right? Gods whom you have not previously known, and let us serve them. You must not listen to their words of that prophet or dreamer, for Yahweh your God will be testing you to see if you love him with all your mind and being. You must follow your God and revere only him, and you must observe his commands, obey him, serve him, remain loyal to him. Now, please understand, again, this idea of testing, it's not literally, they did not literally believe that God was like literally testing. It was that life happens. Tests, trials take place. What do we do with the trials, right? That's the deeper picture here. It goes on. As for the prophet or dreamer, he must be executed. Before because he encouraged rebellion against God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, redeeming you from the place of slavery, and because he has tried to entice you from the way of Yahweh your God has commanded you to go. In this way you must purge out evil from within. Now, this sounds like crazy language, right? But remember, these are people, nomadic people. They're warring people in the middle of a time where this is the kind of language they used. But look at the deeper message here, because there is one. And again, this is why Jesus, he looks back, or the writers, however you want to view it, they look back and they rephrase this to make it make sense, right? They rephrase it in a peaceful, loving way. And the idea here is, again, very simple. If something goes against the wisdom, the beauty that you've heard, right? It goes against what is true and good. If it goes against that, man, you know the thing is not good, right? You got to do your homework. If I could sum it up, you got to do your homework, right? You got to look, you got to check, you got to move, you got to ask questions. If it goes against what's been good, what our people have known to be good and bring life, then you have to do your homework. Ezekiel says this, Ezekiel the prophet, there is a conspiracy of her prophets in her midst. He's talking about a false prophet. Like a roaring lion tearing the prey. They have devoured lives. They have taken treasure and precious things. They have made many widows in her midst of her. Her priests have done violence to my law and have profaned my holy things. Think about that now. These teachers, these people who are claiming to bring truth, are actually like destroying lives. Like, that's heavy, right? They've murdered. I think that's such an interesting phrase there. Basically murdered, brought violence to the law, the thing that shows us how to live in harmony. If something is murdering the stuff, bringing harmony, bringing people together, bringing wholeness, you got to question it. Yeah, that's what Ezekiel's saying. He continues. When you get to Zephaniah, you get another perspective. Her princes within her are roaring lions. Her judges are wolves at evening. They leave nothing for the morning. Her prophets are reckless, treacherous men. Her priests have profaned the sanctuary. They have done violence to the law. Do you notice this over and over again? If it goes against the law, again, if it goes against the wisdom truth that we've seen over and over again happen, if it goes against the beautiful wisdom our ancestors have given, if it goes against that, if it goes against the things that bring life more abundantly, then it is reckless and it hurts the law. It hurts us individually and communally. It hurts us. And so Zephaniah is saying, hey, look, don't just look at what they're saying, but also look at the followers. That's interesting, right? If you ever research someone or a certain teaching or a certain thing that you think to be true or maybe false, you don't know for sure, look at who's following. Look at the followers, because there's always something interesting to find when you do. Yeah, whatever it is, whether it's a political agenda or a spiritual one or whatever the thing is, look at the followers as well, like Zephaniah says. If they are evil, terrible people, not living the beautiful truth, then probably that message isn't really worth following, is it? Because it's not affecting the people. Is it really affecting? Yeah, you got to ask questions of who's following. It's beautiful. Another thing I really like about this too is that these verses call us to do our research. Yeah, do your research. Again, on Netflix right now, there's this whole series about Waco, Texas, right? And I watched this series and I thought, how could anyone ever buy some of this? Like, how could anyone go down that road? But then I think, yeah, if someone weren't asking questions, if they were simply blindly following, if they weren't doing their research, not looking at who's following this teaching, it's so easy to fall prey to it. We have to stop. We have to ask questions. We have to do our research. When we do, the truth has a way of coming to the surface. whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's praiseworthy, think on those things. Those are the things that thing, that teaching, that person, that political opinion, whatever it is, if it doesn't bring that, then it's not worth following. But we have to be willing to put the time and the energy into it to understand. I love this element of the Sermon on the Mount, especially right now in the middle of a country that's doing so much censorship, fact-checking, so much false narratives, so much going on right now. This could not come at a better time. Do your research. Look, try to understand, see what's bringing life and what isn't, and then follow those things that bring life. If I could sum up the words of Jesus, it would be this: be careful what you hear and follow. Be careful. Always test what you're told. Always test what you're told. One of my favorite quotes is on my phone. I'll show you. On my phone, Walt Whitman. So it's such a beautiful quote. He says this: re-examine all you've been told in school or church or in any book and dismiss whatever insults your own soul. Isn't that good? Resist the things that don't bring life. Yeah, ask questions of everything. When you do, the answers will come, and you'll be able to follow the very best path that's going to bring life. So how do we do it? How do we get there? Here's a couple simple things that have worked for me that I think might be helpful for you. Number one, ask the question, does this idea contradict what I've known to be true? Does this contradict everything I've believed in the past? And here's the thing, it might. It might not. But ask the question first. And maybe it does, but maybe that's a good thing. Ask the question, though, from the beginning. Is this in contradiction to what I've always thought? Okay, well, I know that now. Next step, though, don't just stop there. If we all stop there, you wouldn't be listening right now, right? I'd have no podcast followers. The next step, of course, is this. Does the presenter or teacher embody the message? This one's difficult, right? Do those who follow this message believe this thing? Do they embody it? Do they believe it? Do they live it fully? That's a difficult one. Really, really difficult, but beautiful when you understand. The next thing is, does this thing bring life or not? Is it bringing life more abundantly, or is it bringing more pain? Look at the results, because they're there. Look at the results of it. Another thing to do is, does it check out? Do your research, do your study. And I'm talking about something deeper than just opinion pieces, right? What I love to do with the Bible, again, if you want to find what's true, what's not, dig deep. Look at the history. If this is a Jewish compilation of writings and voices, right? If you want to understand that, understand Judaism. Understand the writers, understand the context, the culture, all of it. Do your research. Take time to study. Don't ever just take my words for it, but do the study. Fact check it. Look it over, right? Do the difficult thing. And when you do, usually the truth will emerge. And it's really beautiful. And then lastly, I'm learning, also listen to your gut, right? I'm listening to your gut. Follow your emotions. Does it feel right after you've done all of those things? Does it feel right? And usually when you are allowed to use all of those different elements, usually when you take that step on the path that you follow, it's almost always the right one when you've done the difficult work. So again, in the words of Jesus, be careful what you hear and follow. Always test what you're told. Yeah, if that narrative is only bringing more violence, change the narrative. Question the narrative. If that narrative is making you an angry, irritable, anxious, terrible person, change the narrative. Change it. If that interpretation is making you feel like you're crazy, but you feel like you have to do it because you've always listened to it, find a new interpretation, right? Ask questions. Do the difficult work. Yeah, and when you do, life more abundantly happens. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, please consider giving to ethos-church.org/donate. Give that tax-deductible donation and partner with us in sharing these messages. We think they can bring life more abundantly right here, right now. And if you want to join us in conversations live, the first and the third Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, we come together on Zoom and we have these awesome discussions with people from Michigan, Colorado, Arizona, all over California. We come together and we talk about what it means to be human. And man, is it fun. Hope you could join me there. Email me at tonywerfel@gmail.com. I would love to send you the link. And as always, please subscribe to this channel. Hit the little button. It'll let you know every time we have a new video. Everyone, thank you so much for joining. Question everything. Ask questions. Do the research. Oh, so good. Everyone, I love you. Thanks so much for joining, and we'll see you next week.